The courtroom pulsed with tension that day, the kind of atmosphere that instantly makes veteran television producers sit up straight because they know something unforgettable is about to happen. Bright studio lights flooded Stage 5 on the CBS lot, where Judge Judy's courtroom had served as the battlefield for thousands of legal confrontations over the years. But nothing quite like the storm that was about to explode. The famous wooden bench stood under the harsh glow of television lighting, while cameras, positioned from every angle, waited to capture every reaction, every expression, every second of what would later become one of the most replayed courtroom moments in internet history. At the defendant's table sat Karen Mitchell, 34 years old, blonde highlights perfectly styled despite the early morning filming schedule. A designer handbag rested tightly against her chest like a shield. She shifted impatiently in her seat, carrying the restless confidence of someone who had spent most of her life believing consequences were for other people. Her polished fingernails tapped repeatedly against the polished mahogany table as she quietly rehearsed the speech she believed would humiliate an aging television judge in front of millions. The actual case itself should have been simple. A basic rental car damage dispute. Karen had rear-ended another vehicle while distracted by her phone, and now she was attempting to blame the rental company by claiming the car's braking technology had malfunctioned. Under normal circumstances, it would have been a quick 15-minute segment. But Karen had already convinced herself of something dangerous. She believed this elderly judge could not possibly understand modern technology, modern culture, or modern life. At the center of the courtroom sat Judge Judy-style, herself fulped 81 years old, wrapped in her signature black robe, carrying a lifetime of legal experience behind her sharp eyes. Reading glasses rested perfectly on her face as she carefully reviewed the case file with the calm precision of someone who had presided over more than 12,000 disputes throughout her legendary career. Her silver hair was immaculate, her posture perfectly straight. Everything about her projected the quiet authority of a woman who had been delivering justice since before many people inside that room had even been born. Nearby, the court stenographer hovered over her machine, prepared to record every word of what would soon become courtroom history, while the baff stood silently beside the set, completely unaware that he was about to witness one of the fastest verbal demolitions ever aired on television. But what Karen Mitchell did not know, what nobody inside that courtroom could have predicted, was that her planned insult about Judge Judy's age would trigger a response so devastating, so perfectly calculated, that within just 36 seconds her confidence would completely collapse. The woman who walked into that courtroom believing youth gave her an advantage over an elderly judge was about to discover something painful. Experience is not just a number, it is a weapon. And Judge Judy had spent 4 decades sharpening hers. The cameras rolled silently. The audience watched closely. And Karen Mitchell was only moments away from making the single biggest mistake of her life. She believed she was facing a tired old woman disconnected from the modern world. Instead, she was about to confront a legal predator who had spent her entire career waiting for someone arrogant enough to question her intelligence because of her age. What happened next would be replayed millions of times online. Legal experts would analyze it. Reaction channels would break it down frame by frame. Memes would spread everywhere. And the moment would become the gold standard for how to destroy disrespect inside a courtroom without ever losing control. But before the confrontation exploded, one thing was already clear. The stage had been prepared. The players were in position, and within moments, 36 seconds would change everything forever. The case itself was painfully ordinary, exactly the kind of petty argument that filled Judge Judy's schedule every single day. Karen Mitchell had crashed into another vehicle while distracted by her cell phone, causing damage to both cars involved. Instead of accepting responsibility, she insisted the rental company should pay because the vehicle's brake system supposedly failed during the incident. under normal circumstances, it should have been resolved quickly. Cell facts, sebble responsibility. Simple judgment, but Karen entered the courtroom with an entirely different agenda. Earlier that morning, while waiting in the green room before filming began, she had spent her time scrolling through social media comments criticizing Judge Judy's age. Comment after comment described the television judge as outdated, old-fashioned, and disconnected from modern technology. And somewhere during that endless scrolling, Karen began believing those opinions completely. The disrespect planted itself in her mind and quickly grew into confidence. Judge Judy began the hearing the same way she had begun thousands of cases before, calm. Professional direct. She simply asked Karen to explain the circumstances surrounding the accident in her own words. At first, Karen answered normally, but slowly something darker began creeping into her tone. There was a smug edge behind her words now. The subtle superiority of someone convinced that youth automatically meant intelligence while age automatically meant incompetence. As she explained the accident, Karen repeatedly gestured dismissively toward the bench, her body language radiating disrespect long before her actual words revealed it openly. Then came the moment that changed everything. Judge Judy interrupted briefly to clarify a detail regarding the rental agreement, a completely standard legal question. But Karen suddenly snapped. She cut Judge Judy off mid-sentence, her voice rising sharply with the entitled confidence of someone unaccustomed to being challenged. What came out of her mouth next would spread across the internet within hours. "Your Honor," Karen said, her voice dripping with fake politeness, "I'm honestly not sure someone of your age fully understands the complexities of modern automotive systems and digital technology." The courtroom froze, but Karen wasn't finished. Instead of stopping, she continued digging herself deeper. She suggested that maybe older judges should step aside and allow younger generations, people who actually understood modern systems, to handle cases involving technology. Her gestures became larger. Her confidence grew stronger, and with every word, she painted Judge Judy as outdated, disconnected, and incapable of understanding today's world. The insults spread through the courtroom like poison. This was no longer simple disrespect. Karen had openly challenged the intelligence and authority of a sitting judge on national television. The stenographer's hands stopped moving entirely. The baff raised his eyebrows in disbelief. Even the camera operators shifted awkwardly behind their equipment. Everyone understood something Karen did not. She had just committed professional suicide on live television. But Karen still sat there smiling confidently, convinced her youth somehow gave her power over an 81-year-old judge. What she didn't realize was that she had just awakened something dangerous. Judge Judy had spent decades handling difficult defendants, liars, manipulators, scammers, and every kind of courtroom disruption imaginable. But very few people had ever been foolish enough to challenge her intelligence because of her age. The woman who built an empire on swift justice and zero tolerance for nonsense was now preparing to unleash 40 years of accumulated legal fury, and Karen Mitchell had absolutely no idea what was coming. The courtroom became impossibly quiet after Karen's insulting comments about Judge Judy's competence and age. Silence dropped over the room like a heavy curtain. Only the faint hum of television equipment could still be heard. Judge Judy did not move, not even slightly. She didn't blink. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she slowly removed her reading glasses with careful precision. The soft sound of the glasses folding echoed loudly through the dead silence. Every tiny click seemed amplified inside the room. Then Judge Judy placed them gently on her desk. The sound was soft, but somehow it felt heavier than thunder. Her hands folded calmly in front of her as she locked eyes directly onto Karen. It was not the look of someone offended. It was the look of a predator staring at prey that had willingly walked into a trap. For 7 long seconds, Judge Judy said absolutely nothing. But that silence alone began destroying Karen's confidence piece by piece. The camera operator slowly zoomed in closer, capturing every tiny shift in Judge Judy's expression. The tightening around her eyes, the change in posture, the unmistakable warning signs that experienced courtroom staff recognized immediately the bafe had seen that look before. It was the expression Judge Judy wore when someone had crossed a line so serious that there was no escaping the consequences afterward. Finally, Judge Judy spoke. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. But it carried the weight of 40 years spent inside real courtrooms. "Ms. Mitchell," she began slowly, and somehow those two simple words alone already sounded terrifying. "In my 40 years practicing law," she paused, "and in my 25 years on television, every eye remained fixed on her. I have encountered every form of disrespect imaginable." Her tone stayed calm, but something volcanic was clearly building beneath it. "I have dealt with liars, manipulators, professional victims, deadbeats, scammers, and people who believed excuses could overpower facts." Karen's confident posture began weakening visibly. But then Judge Judy leaned slightly forward, and her voice sharpened. "But questioning my mental ability because of my age." The room held its breath. "Suggesting I'm too old to understand the modern world." A dangerous pause filled the courtroom. "That," Judge Judy said coldly, "is a very special kind of stupid, Ms. Mitchell." The sentence hit the room like an explosion, and suddenly everyone understood Karen Mitchell had just started a war she was about to lose spectacularly. Any reasonable person would have backed down immediately after receiving a warning like that from Judge Judy. Most people would have apologized, lowered their head, and desperately tried to escape further humiliation. But Karen Mitchell was not reasonable. She was a woman shaped by years of entitlement, social media validation, and the dangerous belief that confidence alone could overpower authority. Instead of retreating, she doubled down. Karen suddenly stood up from her chair, waving her hands dramatically toward the bench as if she were speaking to a confused relative rather than one of the most respected judges in television history. "Your Honor," she declared loudly, "I absolutely have the right to question the competence of public figures, especially people who are clearly past their prime." Gasps moved through the courtroom again. But Karen kept going. She spoke with the condescending tone of someone who had likely spent her entire life bullying customer service workers, arguing with employees, and mistaking arrogance for intelligence. "I have a college degree," she continued proudly. "I run a successful social media brand with over 50,000 followers." Then she pointed lightly toward herself. "I represent a modern generation that understands technology in ways your generation simply cannot." The arrogance was breathtaking. Here sat a woman who had rear-ended another vehicle because she was distracted by texting on her phone, now attempting to lecture Judge Judy about competence. Karen pulled her cell phone from her purse and waved it dramatically through the air like evidence supporting her argument. "This device alone," she announced loudly, "has more computing power than the entire legal system had when you first became a lawyer." Some audience members physically cringed. Karen continued anyway. "Modern vehicles rely on digital systems, GPS tracking, computer diagnostics, and advanced interfaces. Cases involving technology require people with contemporary mindsets." Judge Judy remained perfectly motionless throughout the entire performance. But her expression had changed. The dangerous calm from earlier had evolved into something even worse: predatory amusement. Her fingers slowly pressed together in front of her, a gesture longtime courtroom observers recognized instantly. Someone was about to be intellectually destroyed. Karen, completely oblivious, continued marching toward disaster. "I'm not trying to be disrespectful." She lied confidently, even as every sentence dripped with disrespect. "But facts are facts," she continued. "Cognitive decline is a normal part of aging." The room became painfully still. "And honestly," Karen added, "it seems irresponsible to have judges deciding modern technology cases when they probably don't even know how to use email." Several people in the audience exchanged stunned looks. Karen's words came faster now, almost desperate. "I think it's time for younger legal minds to take over," she insisted. "People who actually understand the world we live in today." The stenographer's hands had completely stopped moving now. Not because she missed anything, because secondhand embarrassment had physically frozen her. The knife slowly shifted closer to Karen's table. Not because he expected violence, but because he recognized the expression forming on Judge Judy's face, and he knew something devastating was about to happen. Even the camera operators quietly adjusted their angles. Instinctively aware they were filming television history, finally Judge Judy leaned back slightly in her chair. When she spoke again, her voice carried the calm certainty of someone who had just watched their opponent destroy themselves completely. "Mitchell," she began slowly, and somehow even her saying Karen's last name sounded terrifying. "You want to discuss competence?" The room remained silent. "You want to lecture me about cognitive ability and generational superiority?" A small smile appeared at the corner of her mouth, not warmth, not kindness. Predatory confidence. "You want to explain the modern world to me?" Karen's face visibly tightened. Then Judge Judy delivered the sentence that changed the energy of the courtroom entirely. "Fine," she said calmly. "Let's discuss qualifications." The silence became unbearable. "Let's compare 40 years of earned legal experience." She paused deliberately, against 34 years of entitlement. The sentence landed like a hammer. Judge Judy leaned forward now, her voice carrying the crushing weight of decades spent inside real courtrooms where real consequences existed. "You want to discuss qualifications, Miss Mitchell?" she asked sharply. "Then let's begin with yours." Karen swallowed hard. "You are 34 years old," Judge Judy continued. "You rear-ended another driver because you were staring at your cell phone instead of the road." Every word struck with surgical precision. "You are now attempting to blame a rental company for your own negligence." Another pause. "And somehow—" Judge Judy's eyes narrowed. "You believe 50,000 social media followers qualifies you to lecture a sitting judge about competence." The courtroom went silent again. Karen's face had shifted from confident red to nervous pale white, but Judge Judy still wasn't finished. "I have practiced law since 1965, she continued calmly. "Before you were even a possibility in your parents' imagination." The audience erupted with quiet reactions. "I have handled over 25,000 legal disputes. I have helped shape legal precedents still referenced today." Her voice remained perfectly controlled, "and I built a television empire that educated millions of Americans about justice, accountability, and personal responsibility." Karen's confidence collapsed further with every sentence. Judge Judy leaned slightly closer. "You mentioned cognitive decline and technology competence." A dangerous smile appeared. "I currently run multiple businesses, manage a media empire worth hundreds of millions of dollars." She paused. "And last week alone, I negotiated contracts your entire influencer career could never financially support." The courtroom practically vibrated with tension. Then came the line that would later spread across the internet like wildfire. Judge Judy lowered her voice into a deadly whisper. "I've been delivering real justice since before you learned how to spell the word competence, sweetheart." Karen froze completely. "And right now," Judge Judy continued coldly, "I'm about to give your participation trophy generation a masterclass in consequences." Absolute silence followed. Karen's mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. The woman who entered the courtroom believing youth gave her power now looked completely shattered. For the first time since the confrontation began, she realized she had challenged the wrong person. The silence after Judge Judy's devastating response felt almost unreal. It wasn't ordinary quiet. It was the kind of silence created when someone's entire sense of superiority collapses in front of an audience. Karen Mitchell stood frozen beside the defendant's table, gripping her designer handbag tightly against her chest like it could somehow protect her from the destruction unfolding around her. Only minutes earlier, she had walked into that courtroom overflowing with confidence, convinced her youth, technology knowledge, and social media popularity made her intellectually superior to an elderly judge. Now she looked completely lost. Like a child who had wandered into dangerous territory and finally realized nobody was coming to rescue her. When Karen finally attempted to speak again, her voice barely functioned. "Your Honor, I didn't mean." The sentence broke apart halfway through as her confidence completely abandoned her, but before she could continue, Judge Judy calmly lifted a single finger. And instantly, Karen stopped talking. The power shift was now absolute. Karen no longer controlled anything, not even her own ability to speak. What happened next was painful for everyone in the courtroom to watch. The entitled confidence Karen had carried for 34 years collapsed completely in real time. "Please, Your Honor," she whispered desperately, her voice cracking with panic. "I'm so sorry. I was completely out of line." Her perfectly manicured hands trembled visibly now. Please don't hold this against me. I have so much respect for you and for the court." The desperation in her voice sounded raw and humiliating. This was no longer someone trying to win an argument. This was someone realizing consequences had finally caught up to them. Tears slowly began forming in Karen's eyes as the full reality crashed down on her. This was not simply a courtroom embarrassment anymore. Millions of people would eventually watch this footage, and they would remember her forever. "I made a terrible mistake," Karen continued weakly. "I honestly don't know what I was thinking." Her voice broke completely. "You were right about everything." The audience watched in stunned fascination as Karen's psychological collapse unfolded live on camera. The camera operators zoomed in closer, fully aware they were recording one of the most unforgettable courtroom moments in television history. The stenographer had practically stopped trying to record Karen's broken apologies because the emotional unraveling had become impossible to follow cleanly. Meanwhile, even the BAF, a man who had witnessed years of dramatic courtroom behavior, looked stunned by how quickly Karen's arrogance had transformed into panic, and outside the courtroom walls, the internet had already exploded. Clips from the confrontation spread across social media faster than producers could react. Hashtags began trending immediately. Karen versus Judge Judy. Respect your elders. 36-second destruction. Reaction videos flooded YouTube. People replayed Judge Judy's responses over and over again. Memes spread across every platform. Karen's humiliation had officially become a cultural event. Within hours, online users identified her social media accounts. Comments flooded her Instagram page. Her influencer career, built entirely on confidence, image, and lifestyle branding, began collapsing before the episode had even finished airing. But what happened between Karen and Judge Judy quickly became larger than entertainment. The confrontation evolved into a cultural symbol, a clash between entitlement and earned authority. Within 24 hours, clips from the exchange had accumulated tens of millions of views across every major platform online. Legal analysts discussed the confrontation. Communication experts broke down Judge Judy's composure. Parents began showing the clip to their children as a lesson about respect, humility, and consequences. Law schools even referenced the exchange in discussions about courtroom decorum and judicial authority. Karen Mitchell's name became internet shorthand for arrogant ignorance colliding with real-world experience. Meanwhile, Judge Judy's response was celebrated as a masterclass in controlled verbal destruction. The message spreading across the internet was simple. Youth does not automatically equal wisdom. Technology knowledge does not replace experience. And confidence without accountability eventually destroys itself. For Karen, however, the aftermath became brutal. Her social media pages went private within hours as criticism poured in from around the world. Brand sponsorships quietly disappeared. Potential business partnerships vanished. Her online image, carefully built over years, crumbled almost overnight. Employers searching her name online would forever find clips of her courtroom humiliation attached to it. Meanwhile, Judge Judy's legacy only became stronger. At 81 years old, she had once again proven why she remained one of the most respected figures on television. She demonstrated that wisdom earned through decades of discipline carries a force that arrogance can never imitate, and perhaps most painfully of all, for Karen, Judge Judy had accomplished it without ever losing control. The woman Karen mocked for being too old had completely dismantled her using nothing except intelligence, experience, and authority, and the world had watched every second of it. The confrontation between Karen Mitchell and Judge Judy quickly became far more than a viral courtroom clip. It transformed into a cultural moment people could not stop discussing. Across television networks, podcasts, reaction channels, and social media platforms, the exchange was replayed endlessly. Millions of viewers watched the moment Karen's confidence collapsed under the crushing weight of earned authority. Within a single day, the footage had spread across the internet at unbelievable speed. More than 50 million people viewed clips of the confrontation within 24 hours alone. Reaction creators analyzed every sentence. Legal commentators praised Judge Judy's composure. Communication experts described the exchange as a perfect example of maintaining authority under direct disrespect. The phrase 36-second destruction became attached to the clip everywhere online. But what truly captured people's attention was not simply the humiliation itself. It was what the confrontation represented. To many viewers, Karen Mitchell symbolized a growing culture of entitlement. The belief that confidence alone equals intelligence, that social media popularity equals expertise, and that youth automatically outweighs wisdom. Judge Judy represented the exact opposite: discipline, experience, accountability, authority earned slowly over decades instead of manufactured instantly online. Parents began sharing the video with their children as a lesson about respecting experience and understanding that arrogance carries consequences. Professors referenced the confrontation in discussions about communication and authority. Law students studied the exchange as an example of courtroom control and judicial composure. The clip became more than entertainment. It became a warning. Karen's downfall, meanwhile, continued long after the cameras stopped rolling. Her influencer image collapsed almost immediately. Brands quietly removed themselves from partnerships connected to her name. Followers disappeared from her accounts daily. The same internet attention she once believed gave her power had now turned against her completely. Eventually, Karen made all of her social media profiles private, attempting to disappear from public attention. But the internet never forgets. Clips of the confrontation continued circulating everywhere, permanently tying her identity to one disastrous moment of arrogance. Future employers searching her name online would immediately discover the courtroom exchange. Potential opportunities vanished before they could even begin. One careless decision on national television had rewritten the course of her entire public life. Judge Judy, however, emerged stronger than ever. At 81 years old, she had once again demonstrated exactly why she remained television royalty after decades in the spotlight. She proved that wisdom sharpened through years of real-world experience remains one of the most powerful forces in any room. Her response to Karen became legendary because she never relied on shouting, insults, or emotional chaos. She stayed controlled, precise, disciplined, and that control made her words infinitely more devastating. People everywhere repeated her lines online. I've been dispensing real justice since before you learned to spell competence. Experience is a weapon. Respect is earned. Those quotes spread across the internet because they touched something deeper than entertainment. They reminded people that authority built through service and discipline cannot easily be challenged by shallow confidence. And perhaps that became the most important lesson of all. Karen believed modern technology and social media influence made older generations irrelevant. Judge Judy proved that no amount of digital popularity can replace decades of earned credibility. By the time the episode finally ended, the contrast between the two women could not have been clearer. Karen's arrogance dissolved into panic, regret, and humiliation. Judge Judy's calm authority only grew stronger. What began as a disrespectful insult about age ended as one of the clearest demonstrations of why experience still matters in a world obsessed with youth. Judge Judy did not simply win a courtroom exchange that day. She delivered a masterclass in consequences, a reminder that respect is never automatically given. It must be earned through character, discipline, consistency, and truth. And Karen Mitchell learned that lesson in front of millions of people. Long after the cameras shut off, one thing remained undeniable. Judge Judy had not just defended herself. She had defended the value of wisdom itself. And in doing so, she reminded the world why real authority can never be erased by arrogance, entitlement, or noise.